Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. This is episode 187, 5 years of changing the conversation. This is the 5-year anniversary episode, and I am excited to tell you the story of what it's been like to do the Choralosophy Podcast for the last 5 years. In the digital realm, where voices meet ideas, there's a podcast that's becoming a community hub for choral music. The Choralosophy Podcast started in February 2019. It was just a small gathering of a few hundred colleagues at first, sharing our love of choral music and talking about it in very nerdy ways and very philosophical ways. I am really excited to announce, after many requests, there is now a Choralosophy merch store. All you need to do is go to the website, choralosophy.com, look for the shop button in the top. You can find Literacy is Equity shirts and sweatshirts and signs for your room. You can find the thank you for your mistake signs, which I love to put on the wall of a classroom, as well as a variety of other show designs. And you can sport your Choralosopher status by going to choralosophy.com/shop and checking out the store there. In year one of the podcast, the first nerdy philosophical episode to really gain some traction and pull in more than 1,000 listeners was Marcus Garrett's first appearance on the show, in which he introduced us to the concept of Beyond Elijah Rock, the music of non-idiomatic Black composers.
After seeing Hillsworth's picture, he was like, "Oh, I can't do that because it's not gospel." And I was like, "I didn't say this was gospel. Like, it's just a cantata like anybody else could have written." And then just over the years, I have noticed that so many conductors and especially students just are not familiar with this. I had a friend who was working on his doctorate in music in his last semester and said that he could not name a single art song or opera aria written by a Black composer. This is his third degree that he's working on, and had never experienced that. So what I found is that for those who are in graduate programs, if you get any time dedicated to Black composers, it's going to be a topic on spirituals. 1, maybe 2 days. Now, at UNL, our grad students have 4 semesters of choral lit. I teach those, and we do. This coming semester is going to be before 1600, then we do 16 to 1750, 1750 to 1900, and then since 1900. Well, in the fall, I got to talk about Jose Mauricio Nunez Garcia. We had a whole day, maybe a day and a half, just on him. Because nobody knows that Afro-Brazilian, not enough people know about that Afro-Brazilian composer. And then at the end of the semester, we talked about Samuel Coleridge Taylor, Hiawatha's Wedding Feast. If you haven't heard it, just go to YouTube and listen to it.
Be sure to listen, comment, and share your related experiences on this episode when you see it posted on social media. You can go to the Choralosopher's Facebook page, and of course on choralosophy.substack.com. You can also join in the conversations there. Stick around. Are you tired of managing multiple platforms to sell tickets, fundraise, and market your performances? Look no further than Ludus.com, an all-in-one solution that's easy to use and free to your organization. With Ludus, you'll have access to a suite of tools and resources specifically designed for the performing arts. From ticket sales to merchandise and fundraising, Ludus has got you covered. So why not give it a try? Save time, money, and resources. Choralosophy listeners can go to ludus.com/Choralosophy for an upgrade for free to their marketing suite. Then, the unexpected happened. When COVID-19 pandemic hit, episode 33 of the podcast seemed to strike a chord with thousands. Suddenly, it wasn't just about music anymore. It sparked conversations among over 15,000 people and even caught the eye of the New York Times. That was the turning point. It also gave me access to guests of a much higher status in looking for analysis and social commentary, medical advice, medical expertise, and a wide range of topics as people were sitting around during the pandemic, needing to be fed and needing to be entertained, but also needing to be informed. I am over the moon to be able to send you this episode and this information today in a time when our entire profession, and this is in the music education profession, and I'm sure our colleagues in other areas of school work with large groups of kids are also reeling right now with the possibility that even though lockdowns are ending, and even though on the news we're hearing things that are reopening and coming back to whatever the new normal is, that might not apply to those of us who work with students in groups. That when school starts back up again, we might not have those groups anymore in the way that we're used to. And that's really hard to hear. That's really hard to wrap our minds around. And my goal with this episode is to try to fill in some of the gaps so that we can use our educated minds as professionals to advocate for ourselves in the best possible way, and more importantly, so that we can advocate for our students and the experiences that we believe so strongly that they deserve.
And that's going to be difficult for a lot of other people. I think from a public policy standpoint, hospital capacity has to be the primary issue that we're thinking about. But for the individual and individual risk tolerance, it has to be their own values in what they think is tolerable to them and what they don't think is tolerable to them, because it's not going to be one size fits all. Some people are much more risk averse than others. And it's also going to be the risk tolerance of the people that are putting on the show or whatever it might be, the singing practice, in terms of the school, in terms of the club, whatever it might be. What risk do they want to have, and how will they handle that risk? So I do think it's not going to be some black or white answer saying, okay, today it's not safe, today it is safe. That's not going to happen. It's going to be lots of gray, and it's going to involve risk perception over time. And this is something that I think we're going to have a societal discussion about, and there's no clear or easy answers to.
So based on all of the areas that are starting to open up gradually and open up in different ways, allowing different types of activities, do you think that 1 to 2 year timeline, how realistic is that? And in that, I hear that a vaccine, a workable vaccine, might take about that long. But if we're starting to open up and expose each other to this at a much faster rate now that the lockdowns are ending many places, will we get to some kind of either herd immunity slash a big enough percentage have been exposed to the point where we know more about the fatality rate before 1 to 2 years, or is it really going to be a 1 to 2 year wait before we know anything?
No, I do think we're going to learn more about what this virus's inherent characteristics are in terms of what its overall case fatality ratio is, what percentage need to be hospitalized, who are the individuals that are at highest risk, and we'll be able to kind of differentiate between diabetes, hypertension, obesity, all of these risk factors we keep hearing about.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the lockdowns were never going to help us get rid of the virus. They weren't going to help us kick it to the dustbin of history. They were simply to spread out how many people were getting sick all at once. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Flattening the curve was about preventing excess deaths and preserving hospital capacity. And it may be that we have the exact same area under the curve with the shutdowns as we would have had otherwise, because we knew that this is a virus that spreads efficiently from person to person. That, by definition, is really not a containable virus, that this was going to establish itself in the human population. And the goal was really basically to push reset and get to a point where the number of cases and the number of hospitalizations was manageable by the healthcare system. It was not to eradicate this virus. This virus is not going to be eradicated.
So the goal of this exercise, this thought exercise today, is to listen to Dr. Adalja and maybe learn something that you didn't already know about the ways that you can process through the risk in your area. And that's going to be one of the big important points that you'll hear throughout. The risk will not be the same everywhere. And so even though we in the choral profession are all in this together, air quotes, we might be in a situation in the very near future where choir is deemed safe in some places and not others. And my challenge to us as a profession is that if we're in an area where it's not safe because of the risk assessment is too high, we are cheering on our brothers and sisters in other parts of the country who are able to have their ensembles. Can we lift them up, make them our standard bearers, or will we react with shaming and jealousy? That's going to be my challenge, because it's going to happen. There will be places that have choir while other places don't. So, of course, that episode came out and was pretty polarizing. In fact, part of that exercise in trying to counter the prevailing narrative that was being pushed at the time by professional organizations that many of us belong to around the world, and especially in the United States, was a letter that I wrote to the board of the National American Choral Directors Association. It was signed by almost 1,000 colleagues that essentially outlined all of the statements of falsehood that were made in a webinar that led people to a lot of conclusions that went viral on Facebook that, again, had downstream negative effects on people's jobs, etc. So, in a lot of ways, that event over the course of May of 2020 put a target on my back as either being a hero for people who don't want to speak out because they're afraid, or a troublemaker. And I would say that that reputation has persisted over the last 4 years. Patreon members really keep this show going financially every month, making sure all the costs are covered out of pocket. But they also get access to my Google folder of goodies, the private podcast feed. They find out who's coming on the show ahead of time, and a variety of other fun little conversations that we're able to have over on the Patreon page. The producers and inner circle at Patreon are Brannigan Lawrence, Brian Long, Chandler Smith, Venture Studios, Jonah Clixbull, Angie Schilling, David Kowalczyk, DF, Kyle Peterson, Max Jackson, Michael Herron, Nathan Hines, Ryan Main, and Stephen Kathy Kakachik. All the while, we have stayed true to our mission of providing robust, well-researched, and thoroughly presented professional development resources for free to educators on demand. Topics like music literacy, vocal pedagogy, classroom management, grading procedures are all regular features here on the show. Hey, I'm on with Donald Brinegar, who is a choral director and an academic and an author who recently came out with a book called Pitch Perfect. And I'm excited to talk to him today and let him talk to you about the ins and outs of choral intonation. So welcome, Donald.
Well, thank you so much. And what a privilege to be with you, and what a great service you're giving to our choral community through this venue.
Well, it's sure been a lot of fun, and I'm almost a year into it, and it is a service that I think is going to be helpful to people as we go forward. But selfishly, I'll have to admit, it has also been great for me because I get to learn a lot too. I've been able to talk to so many smart people in the first year and learning so much. So it's almost like I get my own PD time through that. Unfortunately, my school doesn't give me any credit for this. As
That's right. But this is real graduate school.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We heard some people around us loudly and bravely just go on, and then what happens to everybody else?
They think they're wrong.
They freak out, second guess themselves, and then stop. Right? Now, the lesson, of course, we talked about this last week, we don't stop. If your neighbor makes a mistake, you keep going and you hold your guns and you count and sing on time. Because if somebody counts and sings on time, then we can get back on. Right? But if we all freak out, we can't get back on. Okay? Let's try it again. I bet you we can fix most of that by simply deciding that half notes are equal to 2 beats. And that is a choice. Okay? That's going to happen again here. Yeah? So you're going to hold it first again, and go. Good. Now the mindset is not being perfect, but if you made 5 mistakes that time, this time only make 3. What would that be? That would be improvement. 1, 2, and go.
Do, re, mi, mi, re, do, re, mi, re, do. Re, mi, fa, mi, do, re.
What makes Choralosophy Podcast special is its willingness to tackle the tough stuff. The guests and I dive into everything from music education to psychology, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even broader topics like politics and educational systems. As a result, the show has had its fair share of controversy, generating buzz both positive and negative, but always having an impact on the conversation and expanding the Overton window in choral music and in music education. Some think the show is conservative. Some think the show is too woke. Some have called me the Joe Rogan of choir podcasts or a pusher of dangerous ideologies, while others thank me for speaking up for a lot of people who don't feel safe to speak up for themselves. Here's a clip from an episode 88 with Theron Jenkins, where we discuss and challenge the very popular ways in which we in music education like to essentialize music and each other by race. This was an episode called Music is Inherently Raceless.
Like, to be reductionist about any person based on anything is to rule out all of the other beautiful parts of what we are. And it's to watch, one of the greatest American actors of all time be frustrated that why are you like, of all the things you could ask me about, why are you only asking me about these things? Like, if that's how we're going to look at one another, if that's how I'm going to look at a student that walks into my room who, I haven't had the chance to teach yet, if I just make blanket assumptions about what I think they can or cannot do, then I'm only going to teach part of that kid. I'm not going to teach that whole child. And that's a disservice. It's a really disservice to young people and to people in general to just be reductionist about who we are.
And it teaches them to also reduce themselves.
Exactly.
I was fighting back tears the first time I saw that because, again, it's from the sense of empathy that I feel for how angry I would feel if I was being put in a box like that. We've hosted some big names like Eric Whitaker, John Rutter, Andre Thomas, and many more. But what really sets this podcast apart is its diverse range of voices. From educators to thought leaders in various fields, everyone brings something valuable to the table. Now, 5 years later, Choralosophy Podcast isn't just a podcast. It's a global community and multimedia platform. Thousands of listeners tune in regularly, not just for the professional resources, but for the conversations that challenge and inspire us all to learn and grow. Here's Dr. Eve Ely in episode 50, talking about his inspiring teaching philosophy.
So when the teacher walks into the room, they should come with this sense of adventure. And as I said, stop teaching, start sharing. You don't tell the students what they're supposed to learn. No, you just come in with your own enthusiasm, your own excitement, and you say, guess what? We are going to take this amazing journey today. We're going to go back 400 years. We're going to go, they call it the Baroque period, but that doesn't make any difference. Let's take this music and let's see what we have here. And that's why this early music is so adventuresome, because we are a composite of everything that's happened before us. And so we need to tap into that little aspect. A little bit of the Renaissance still lives in all of us. It's less than the Baroque and a lot less than the Romantic, but a little bit of it, and it needs to be stimulated. And so I would say the Renaissance is kind of introspective music. It's calming music.
In a world where connection is more important than ever, the Choralosophy Podcast wants to remind us that our voices matter, and that together we can create something truly beautiful. One beautiful benefit of being a choral musician, but also a choral musician with a podcast, is the opportunities to collaborate and create collaborations for my students. In 2021, we had a chance to go to Carnegie Hall with my concert choir to perform some music of Jake Runestad. And Choralosophy Podcast created an opportunity for me to get Jake into the room with my students and allow them to interview him. It was a great experience for my kids to get a chance to work with a well-known living composer to talk about the nerdiness and the interpretation of his music, which they had fallen in love with by that time. Here's a clip from episode 120, where Jake is in my classroom with myself and my students.
Frederick Douglass, the ice under us is very thin and is made weak by the warm fogs of fear. And then Martin Luther King, we are driven by love or by fear. I fear you, for I do not know you. And then John the Evangelist, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear.
That's awesome. And so as you're giving that explanation of trying to find diverse voices and from around the world, different places in time, the thing that was impactful for me of that movement is that what that symbolizes to me is that those expressions of almost like the warnings about fear and how it can impact us to do other things that we wouldn't normally want to do is a human problem.
Yeah.
Because if people have been talking about this through centuries across continents, then it's a human problem. It's not a right now problem. It's something that we've always been struggling with as humans, and I thought
all
that was
species.
Really yeah well yeah
all species
for sure
yeah absolutely and so it's, I think, our part of what we do as being human is to process, okay, when am I in for, you've heard of the fight or flight idea, right, which is usually triggered by fear, and so how do we respond if we are feeling threatened in some way? That's a really important thing.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. As always, the way that we keep Choralosophy moving into the future. We just hit 5 years, and the way we hit 5 more years and continue to grow and expand, the way that this platform can be valuable to you, the listener, and can continue to be valuable to the music education landscape is you being involved. The ways that you can be involved, of course, are entering the Choralosophy promo code at all the websites that allow that. They are amazing partners that have been with us mostly since the beginning. That's sightreadingfactory.com, mymusicfolders.com. That is also endeavormusicpublishing.com and graphitepublishing.com. You can also, of course, go over to Ludus and check out their products. You can do the things directly for the show that help, like go to patreon.com/Choralosophy and chip in $3 a month. And if you can't do any of those things, I just want you to join the conversation. So head on over to the Choralosophers Facebook page, like, share, leave comments anywhere that you're able to see the content. Those help other people join the conversation as well. We are building a movement here, and we want you to be a part of it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Choralosophy editing and content creation is generated by yours truly, and Anna Messenger is our social media content guru, and the Patreon supporters are the primary financial support.